"You're trespassing, and your boy is in violation," Patricia said, tapping the laminated notice against Evan's chest as the lake rippled behind her. "Lake access requires the $25 fee. No exceptions," I stepped between them. "Touch him again, and you're the one violating something." "You want an exception?" She smirked. "Pay the fee or expect enforcement." "Enforcement?" I held the paper up to the sunlit water. "That amendment was never recorded with the county, and you addressed a debt notice to a minor. That's unlawful on multiple fronts. If you've ever felt that surge of power when standing up to bullies, hit subscribe now. This showdown is about to become a masterclass in fighting back." "My name's Daniel Mercer," I said, letting my voice steady. "I'm a civil rights attorney. I moved here to raise my son where he could fish in peace on a lake that our dues already maintain. The pier behind you? We donated the cedar slats in my wife's memory. Her plaque's on the third post." The notice crinkled in my grip. "The pier isn't wood to us. It's a promise. My wife taught Evan to bait hooks here the summer before the hospital. Stay turned our calendar into a wall of appointments. After she was gone, the pier became his quiet place, the only spot where the noise in his head slowed to the rhythm of water against pilings. Calling it unauthorized use isn't bureaucracy. It's vandalism of a memory. And targeting a 12-year-old with threats is why people distrust boards that confuse power with purpose." Patricia angled her shoulder toward the security camera on the boathouse, presenting herself to the lens. "You've been warned," she said, loud enough for the recording. "Next notice goes to collections." "Collections can wait," I said, already picturing the clerk's index of filings. "First, I'll file a public records request for your assessment approvals. Second, I'll ask the county to confirm whether your so-called lake fee ever passed a homeowner vote with the required supermajority. Spoiler, it didn't." A pair of patrol cars rolled past the gate at the far end of the trail, summoned by someone who thought badges could be rented by the complaint. Their engines idled as the officers looked from Patricia's arm-folded posture to Evan's tackle box by the bench. One officer raised an eyebrow at the phrase, "arrest for non-payment," on her copy of the notice. The eyebrow stayed up when I mentioned the word minor. They didn't step closer. They didn't have to. Lakewood Estates markets itself as a gated sanctuary, a curated loop of cottages and boat slips and ornamental grasses that lean in the afternoon wind like obedient parishioners. But a sanctuary can sour when the stewards forget who it's for. My wife and I chose this place because of that lake. We paid for it in both dues and grief. I won't let a $25 fiction rewrite where my son grieves safely. Patricia tried to regain the frame. "Rules are rules," she announced toward the boathouse camera, as if the lens were a courtroom. "Rules are contracts," I said softer, "and contracts require authority you don't have. Where are you watching from? Because wherever you are, know this. They picked the prettiest place in our neighborhood to make their stand, and the one place I will never concede. I'm not here to argue on a walkway. I'm here to unwind the knot they tied around our community. The fee is a thread, and when I pull it, the whole garment comes loose." I tucked the notice into a folder, not as evidence of guilt, but as evidence of their carelessness. The camera caught Patricia straightening her blouse, a habit she has when rattled. That told me enough about the next few weeks. Letters, posturing, maybe a lien threat. Good. Paper leaves a trail, and trails end somewhere official. Evan set the rod down without my asking. He knows the cadence now. They press, we document. We walk away when the water stops feeling like water. But we come back when the sun is lower, when the wind lays down, when the pier we built for her is just a pier again. I looked past Patricia to the third post with the small brass plate, the one that bears a name we still say out loud on hard days. She chose the wrong place to stage a performance and the wrong father to corner. I won't tell her the plan. I don't need to. Legal standing isn't a debate. It's a cliff edge she's already stepped over, and I'm the one who knows exactly how far the drop is. The next morning, the lake was quiet, but my mailbox wasn't. A fat envelope from Lakewood Estates sat inside, stamped with the HOA seal like it was court-issued. I slid it open at my kitchen counter, the brass plaque from the pier still sharp in my mind. Patricia had escalated. Pages of violation notices stapled together, each one more absurd than the last. Unauthorized fishing, unauthorized presence, even failure to remit mandatory recreational assessment, all tied to my son's name, not mine. At first glance, it looked official, intimidating as designed. But the wording was sloppy. The citations referenced bylaw sections that didn't exist. The fine structure table was pasted from a landscaping clause. She wanted intimidation, not accuracy. That's how bullies work. Overwhelmed with noise, hope the target doesn't read past the bold header. I spread the pages across the dining table, each one beside the others like puzzle pieces. The flaws weren't just mistakes, they were fingerprints. Evidence of overreach. Evidence I could trace back to her desk. But what mattered more was the target, Evan, every sheet addressed to him, as though a child could be indebted to a homeowners association. That wasn't just sloppy, it was reckless. Under federal and state consumer laws, minors can't be pursued for debt. It wasn't a violation of rules, it was a violation of rights. I took a photo of the stack, time-stamped it, then slid the papers into a binder. Not for intimidation, but for record keeping. Every fight like this lives and dies on records. The kitchen window opened to the cul-de-sac, where neighbors wheeled trash cans down the curb. Across the street, I saw Mark Hollis, treasurer, reluctant participant, dragging his bin half-heartedly, shoulders slumped. He caught my glance, then quickly looked away. That told me more than words. Not everyone in that boardroom supported Patricia. Some followed because silence was easier. Silence, though, leaves a trail too. By mid-morning, the neighborhood Facebook group lit up. Patricia had posted an urgent reminder about unauthorized fishing activities and the board's duty to protect common resources. Comments flowed underneath, half outrage, half confusion. Most people didn't even know the fee existed. A mother 2 streets down asked why her family never got notice until now. Another neighbor wanted to know when the board voted. Patricia, of course, replied with canned authority. All decisions are official board actions. No details, no transparency, just the voice of someone trying to hold a crumbling wall together. That's when the community impact became visible. It wasn't just my fight. Parents started worrying their kids could be next, accused of trespassing on their own playground or basketball court. Retirees wondered if the board could invent a walking trail fee. Fear spreads fastest when rules are vague, and Patricia had just shown how vague hers were. I stepped outside, binder under my arm, and walked to the community center. It was the board's pride, a renovated ranch house with bulletin boards plastered in rules and notices. Inside, the smell of fresh paint mixed with the faint must of stacked folding chairs. On the wall, a corkboard displayed official meeting minutes, at least what they wanted residents to see. I scanned the last 6 months, landscaping votes, pool hours, budget for security cameras, not one mention of a lake fee. That absence mattered more than any written threat. Legally, silence is a chasm. If a board doesn't record a vote, it doesn't exist. And in that omission, I found the first crack wide enough to break open. Back home, I logged into the county clerk's website. The database of HOA filings stretched back 20 years. Every amendment, every assessment, every vote recorded in grainy PDF scans. My fingers traced down the index, dues schedule, maintenance reserves, architectural guidelines. But nothing, not a single line, about a recreational fee or lake assessment. Patricia hadn't just skipped a vote, she'd skipped the law itself. The discovery didn't feel like a win yet. It felt like a lock clicking open on the first of many doors. Proof is only power when used correctly, and using it meant patience, strategy, timing. For now, I had to let the community see what she was doing, let the outrage simmer until it boiled. As I shut the binder, Evan came into the kitchen with his tackle box. He hesitated, waiting for my nod. I didn't give it, not yet. The pier would still be there tomorrow and the next day and the day after that. But this binder, this was the rod and reel I needed first. The binder stayed on the kitchen counter that night, its edges squared with the grain of the table like a sentinel. By morning, I decided it was time to watch the board operate in its natural habitat. Their monthly coffee hour was scheduled at the clubhouse, a casual gathering dressed up as transparency. Evan stayed home, still restless about the pier, while I carried the binder under my arm as though it were just a folder of notes. The clubhouse smelled of burned coffee and new carpet glue, a sterile attempt at warmth. Folding tables formed a U shape, Patricia at the head like a monarch presiding over commoners. She didn't notice me at first. Her voice carried across the room as she recited platitudes about protecting our lake and safeguarding property values. Every phrase was polished, hollow. Across from her sat Mark Hollis, the treasurer, his shoulders hunched forward, hands folded so tightly his knuckles blanched. He scribbled on his pad, erased, scribbled again, as though the pen could soak up his doubt. When Patricia spoke about unanimous board support, his pen froze mid-scratch. He didn't look up, but the pause betrayed him. I took a seat at the back, flipping open the binder just enough for the pages to catch the light. Patricia's gaze flicked toward it, then away, as if the edges of her authority didn't want to touch the reality of what I carried. When the topic turned to delinquent accounts, Mark's posture tightened further. His jaw flexed as Patricia read names aloud. My sons came first. She lingered on it like savoring victory. Mark shifted in his chair, the eraser end of his pencil tapping an uneven rhythm against the pad. 1, 2, pause. 1, 2, 3, longer pause. He didn't meet my eyes, but the rhythm was its own Morse code. Discomfort, unease, maybe guilt. The crowd was small, mostly retirees sipping styrofoam cups of coffee, their faces pinched with concern. A few glanced my way when Patricia announced, "Even children must comply with community rules." That was her play, making it sound normal, even noble. But Mark's shoulders sagged. His eyes darted toward the floor, then to the minutes binder on the side table. He wanted to say something, but the gravity of the room pinned him down. I let the silence stretch before I spoke. Where in the recorded minutes did this fee receive approval? My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the hum. Patricia bristled, chin lifting. The board acted in accordance with its duties. My binder clicked shut, deliberately sharp. Then the minutes will confirm that. Mark's pencil snapped in two. He didn't speak. His hand swept the pieces into his lap like broken glass. That tiny collapse told me more than words could. He knew the minutes were silent. He knew Patricia was bluffing. And he couldn't reconcile the lie she told with the truth he carried. The meeting stumbled forward. Patricia moved to landscaping budgets, but Mark barely followed. He tugged at his collar, wiped his forehead, though the air conditioning hummed strong. When the group disbanded, I lingered by the corkboard where notices were pinned. Mark gathered his papers slowly, as though waiting for the room to empty. He avoided my gaze until the last neighbor shuffled out. Then he exhaled hard, shoulders deflating like a tire losing air. His hands stuffed the broken pencil halves into his pocket. He didn't speak a word, but his eyes flicked toward my binder, then toward Patricia's retreating figure, and finally to the exit door. His meaning was clear. He couldn't risk open defiance yet, but he wanted me to keep pressing. The clubhouse door shut behind him, the echo sharp against the empty walls. I tucked the binder under my arm again. The silence of the minutes was still my strongest weapon. But now, Mark's hesitation had given me another, the knowledge that truth was sitting inside the board itself, waiting for the right crack to break it free. Where are you watching from? Because wherever it is, you've seen this moment before, the one where someone wants to do the right thing but hasn't found their courage. Patricia thinks silence equals loyalty. She's wrong. Silence equals pressure, and pressure always finds a fault line. The clubhouse silence followed me home like a shadow. I had seen Mark Hollis crack without a sound, and Patricia's veneer harden in equal measure. But by the next afternoon, she made her next move. The escalation didn't arrive in the form of a letter this time. It came nailed to my front door. A bright orange paper fluttered against the wood when I returned from work, its adhesive corners struggling in the wind. "Final notice of enforcement action," it screamed in bold black letters, stapled crooked. Below, in Patricia's careful script, my son's name was listed as the responsible party. The absurdity nearly burned my eyes. A child labeled responsible party for a debt? This wasn't intimidation anymore. It was a spectacle. She wanted the neighborhood to see it, to humiliate, to scare. I peeled the paper away and carried it inside, careful not to tear it. Every word was evidence. My binder grew heavier by the day, each edition another stone on Patricia's scale, Evan sat at the kitchen table, math homework open but untouched, his eyes fixed on the notice. "Is this what they'll keep doing?" he asked, voice tight. I laid the paper flat on the counter. They can post whatever they want. It doesn't make it legal. But the stakes had shifted. Patricia wasn't content with mailed threats. She had gone public. And when an HOA uses your door as a bulletin board, the whole neighborhood notices. By evening, my phone buzzed with texts from neighbors. A photo of the notice circulated in the community chat. Some residents asked if it was true. Others questioned why a child's name appeared on official paper. Patricia responded with vague language about family accountability. It was the kind of phrase designed to sound justifiable, but hollow on inspection. The next morning, I went to the county records office downtown, a utilitarian building with beige walls and endless file cabinets. It smelled faintly of toner and dust. This was no lakeside pier or coffee hour. It was neutral ground, the kind Patricia couldn't control. At the counter, I requested Lakewood Estates' most recent filings. The clerk, practiced in detachment, handed me a thin folder. Inside, the truth was stark. The last properly recorded amendment was 5 years old, a minor adjustment to pool hours. Nothing about fees for the lake, nothing about recreational assessments. That absence was my leverage. A board cannot enforce what it never filed. Patricia's entire campaign rested on air. Walking out, I tucked the certified copies into my binder. The downtown courthouse square buzzed with traffic and lunchtime chatter, but in my hands was silence, official, legal silence that spoke louder than any notice Patricia could staple to my door. When I returned home, a group of neighbors stood clustered near the mailbox row. One of them held the orange paper Patricia had posted. Their voices carried fragments of doubt. Can they really do this? What about my grandkids? I never voted on a lake fee. I joined the circle. You didn't, I said. No one did. I checked the records today. There's no vote, no amendment, no authority. This isn't just harassment, it's unlawful. The words landed like stones dropped into still water. Ripples moved across their faces. Fear shifted into frustration, and frustration into curiosity. Patricia's strongest weapon, appearance of authority, had just lost weight. I didn't reveal the full plan, not yet. Timing mattered, but the seed had been planted. Doubt in leadership spreads faster than loyalty when people realize they've been misled. Where are you watching from? Because here in Lakewood Estates, the door flyers aren't warnings anymore. They're proof. Proof of overreach, proof of silence in the records, proof of a president grasping for control she doesn't have, and proof that this fight is no longer mine alone. Proof has weight, but in battles like these, proof only matters if it can't be buried. Patricia had already shown she wasn't afraid to escalate, and the orange flyer was still the talk of the neighborhood group chat. That meant her next step would come quickly, and it did. 2 days later, I found myself standing in the small office suite that Lakewood Estates rented above a strip of insurance agencies and tax prep shops. Patricia had summoned me for what she called an informal resolution meeting. The letter she slid under my door dressed it up with legal buzzwords, but I recognized the tactic. Lure me into her space, establish dominance, bluff with paperwork. The HOA office was neat, over-decorated with framed stock photos of lakes and smiling families. A receptionist's desk stood empty, the only sound the tick of a wall clock. Patricia waited inside a glass-walled conference room, a stack of papers arranged like a fort in front of her. Mark Hollis sat 2 chairs down, shoulders rounded, his pen already tapping a nervous beat against the tabletop. She gestured for me to sit. "Mr. Mercer, thank you for coming. We want to resolve this without escalating further." I set my binder down with a quiet thud. "Funny, that's exactly what I want." Patricia pushed one of the papers across the table. It was a payment agreement, already filled in with my son's name. "Sign this today and we'll waive late penalties." Mark's pen stopped tapping. His eyes darted to me, then to the document, then back to the table. His lips pressed thin, a man wrestling with words he couldn't speak. I slid the paper back toward her without looking at it. "This agreement is worthless. You can't contract with a minor, and you know it. Or you should—" Her jaw tightened. "You're obstructing community governance. The board has full authority to levy assessments." "Assessments, yes," I said. But not this one. I visited the county records office. There's no filing, no amendment, no vote. The lake fee exists only in your letters. That makes it not an assessment, but a fabrication. Mark flinched as if the word struck him. He adjusted his glasses, stared at the table, and scribbled something half-heartedly in the margin of his pad. His body screamed conflict, trapped between loyalty and truth. Patricia leaned back, her confidence fraying. You think technicalities will shield you? We can place a lien, collections will follow. Property values depend on lawful governance, I cut in. And you've left a paper trail proving the opposite. Every notice, every post, every flyer you've pinned to my door goes into this binder. When the county reviews it against your filings, they'll see what I see. Overreach. Mark's hand froze over his notepad. He tapped the pen once, twice, then snapped the cap on tight. His shoulders lifted as he inhaled, but he said nothing. Still, the tension in him was different now. Not just discomfort, but decision waiting to be made. The meeting dissolved after that. Patricia dismissed me with clipped words, her eyes flicking to Mark as though she expected him to back her. He didn't. He just gathered his papers quietly, the broken rhythm of his earlier tapping echoing in my memory. Walking out of the office suite, I felt the shift. The discovery wasn't just that the lake fee was absent from the county's records. It was that Patricia knew it, and Mark knew it too. He hadn't denied it, hadn't defended her. Silence in a room where loyalty should have spoken was confirmation enough. Where are you watching from? Because from where I stand, every bluff they play adds another card to my deck, and soon enough, the whole stack will topple. The air outside the office felt lighter, but I knew Patricia wouldn't let silence be the last word. Her kind of authority thrived on escalation, and by the weekend, the escalation arrived. Saturday morning, Evan and I walked to the community playground. The lake glimmered in the distance, but today, he just wanted to shoot baskets with the neighborhood kids. When we reached the court, a fresh sign hung on the chain-link fence. Access restricted, unpaid fees. The wording was nearly identical to the lake notices. Except this time, it wasn't about fishing. It was about basketball. Parents gathered nearby, their faces etched with confusion and irritation. A mother shook her head, pointing to the sign. We already pay dues. What is this now? Another father muttered about his HOA check clearing just last week. Patricia wasn't limiting her aggression to my family anymore. She was testing whether fear could spread across the community. Evan stood still, ball tucked under his arm, staring at the sign. His jaw clenched the way mine used to in courtrooms before cross-examining hostile witnesses. He didn't say it, but I knew what he was thinking. If they can lock a basketball court, they can take anything. I turned to the parents. This restriction isn't valid. No board vote, no record, no amendment. Just another sign. The crowd shifted, their uncertainty thinning into anger. One man pulled out his phone, scrolling through the neighborhood group chat. Patricia had already posted a photo of the sign, declaring it a necessary enforcement measure due to delinquent accounts. The comments below were exploding, residents asking why they'd never heard of these new fees, why children were being punished, why no vote had been taken. Patricia replied with the same cold refrain. The board acted in the community's best interest. But the tone had changed. Instead of silence or timid agreement, neighbors were pushing back. One even asked when the next board election was scheduled. The spell of authority was cracking. I walked up to the sign and pulled it free from the fence. The metal hook snapped loose, the sign folding under my arm. I held it up for the parents to see. This is evidence, I said. Not law. And I'll add it to the binder. That evening, I sat at my desk, organizing the new material. The pattern was clear now. Patricia was manufacturing rules faster than residents could question them, plastering signs and notices to create the illusion of governance. But illusions collapse when exposed to light. I printed copies of the certified county, filings highlighting the absence of any recreational assessments. Then I slid the playground sign in next to the lake flyer. The binder was no longer just my defense, it was the prosecution's case in waiting. As I worked, Evan came in quietly, setting his basketball on the floor. He didn't need to ask whether he'd be able to play tomorrow. He just needed to see me turning chaos into order. That was our rhythm now. They attacked, I documented. He watched, learning that silence and patience were weapons too. The next day I walked the neighborhood trail. Word of the playground closure had spread like fire. Groups of residents clustered on porches, voices rising with indignation. Mark Hollis stood on his driveway, papers under his arm, head bowed as he listened to an older neighbor berate him. His hands fidgeted, shuffling papers he didn't want to hold. When his eyes lifted and met mine, he didn't look away this time. There was something in his stare, weariness, maybe shame, but also readiness. The stakes had shifted. Patricia's overreach had widened the battlefield, dragging every family into the fight. It wasn't about a $25 lake fee anymore. It was about the board's legitimacy. Where are you watching from? Because from this court, this playground, this community, the writing is on every sign they post. Patricia just turned her own neighbors into witnesses against her. And I'm the one holding the record of every step. By Monday evening, the neighborhood tension was thick enough to touch. Patricia's signs had stirred more anger than compliance, and the Facebook group threads had become a battlefield she couldn't moderate fast enough. Still, the board held its closed-door meeting at the community center, lights burning late into the night. I didn't attend. I knew how those shows ended. Instead, I walked past afterward, binder under my arm, as residents trickled out with whispered complaints. Mark Hollis lingered by the entrance, his shoulders heavy under the glow of a flickering lamppost. His tie was loosened, his notepad clutched to his chest like a shield. When he saw me, he froze. For a long moment, I thought he'd walk the other way. Instead, he stepped closer, the hesitation plain in every movement. "Daniel," he said, low, glancing around as if the shadows themselves could be listening. "We need to talk." "Not here." We ended up at the neighborhood park bench tucked under a canopy of oaks, just far enough from the streetlights to feel hidden. Mark sat hunched forward, elbows on knees, notepad unopened, his hands rubbed together, the motion restless, as though he was trying to warm away his own guilt. "I didn't vote for any of this," Mark began. His voice was barely above a whisper. "There was never a vote. Patricia writes things, prints them, and tells us to sign afterward. Sometimes the rest of us don't even see the drafts until residents are already getting notices." I kept my expression, neutral, letting him speak. His words tumbled faster now, the dam finally giving way. "She said the lake fee would be small, that no one would question it. Then she started pushing these notices on kids, your son, others. I told her it was a mistake, that it could backfire. She called me soft, said the community needed discipline." Mark pulled a folded sheet from his notepad. His fingers trembled as he handed it to me. "This is her draft from last month. Look at the header. Proposed recreational assessment. She never marked it final, never filed it, but she used it anyway." I unfolded the page carefully. The text was riddled with Patricia's annotations. Add minors to liability clause. Collections threat stronger. Make signs match. At the top, scrawled in pen, was a note. "No need for full board vote. Residents won't check." That single line was dynamite, proof not only of overreach, but intent. Mark leaned back, running a hand down his face. "I shouldn't be giving you this. She'll know it came from me. Your treasurer," I said quietly. "Your duty isn't to Patricia, it's to the homeowners. And you know this will end worse if it keeps going." He exhaled shakily. "I know. That's why I'm telling you now. The next step she's planning is liens. She thinks scaring people with property loss will make them pay. But without filings, without votes, those liens won't stand." The admission tightened something in my chest. Patricia wasn't just bluffing anymore. She was preparing to cross into outright fraud. And Mark's testimony, combined with her annotated draft, was the missing link. Mark rose from the bench, adjusting his glasses, shoulders still weighed down. "You didn't hear this from me. Not yet. But when the time comes, I'll speak. Just not until I know others will stand beside me." I nodded, sliding the draft into my binder. "That time will come. And when it does, you won't be alone." He gave a small, almost imperceptible nod before walking back toward the glow of his porch light, leaving me under the oak canopy with a document that shifted the battlefield entirely. "Where are you watching from? Because tonight, the silence finally cracked. The treasurer of Lakewood Estates just handed me the first piece of proof that the so-called lake fee isn't incompetence. It's calculated fraud. And when fraud meets daylight, there's no bluff strong enough to survive. The oak canopy still lingered in my mind the next morning, but the folded draft in my binder carried far more weight than the shadows Mark had spoken under. Patricia had crossed into deliberate deception, and now I had proof in her own handwriting. But proof alone doesn't win a battle. It has to be wielded with precision. I chose my battleground carefully. Instead of waiting for the next HOA stunt, I drove downtown to my office, a modest suite I'd kept after leaving big city. Litigation tucked above a bookstore. The shelves still carried law books I hadn't cracked in years, but the walls were lined with framed case outcomes, reminders of battles won when the odds seemed impossible. At my desk, I opened the binder. Certified county records on one side, Patricia's draft on the other, and a growing stack of notices, flyers, and photographs in between. It was time to shape raw evidence into strategy. First, I drafted a timeline. Dates of Patricia's first fee announcement, the day Evan's notice arrived, the orange flyer nailed to my door, the basketball court sign, each item connected to her pattern. Unilateral action, no board vote, no county filing. Next, I highlighted language from her draft, the phrase about minors, the line about no need for vote. When aligned with the official silence in county records, the contrast was glaring, a paper empire built on lies. But strategy meant more than evidence. It meant knowing which doors to knock on and which to leave closed until the right time. Patricia expected me to swing in court, where she could cry, technicalities. I needed a broader stage, one where neighbors, not just judges, could see. By midday, I left the office and walked across the street to the cafe where half the neighborhood gathered for breakfast. The place buzzed with quiet chatter, silverware clinking against plates. At a corner table, a small group of residents whispered about the playground sign. Their tone wasn't fear anymore. It was anger. I ordered coffee, sat within earshot, and unfolded my binder just enough for the county records to show. Their conversation slowed. One leaned closer, eyes flicking to the documents. "It's not real," I said calmly, turning a page so the highlighted absence gleamed. No amendment, no vote. Just signatures she never had authority to enforce. The table fell silent. Then one man let out a sharp breath. "So she's been lying to all of us." I nodded once. "And she plans to escalate. Liens, collections. Unless she's stopped, I didn't give them every piece yet." Mark's draft remained tucked in the binder's back pocket, but I gave enough for their doubt to harden into certainty. And certainty spreads faster than fear. That evening, the neighborhood group chat exploded again. This time, residents weren't just questioning, they were demanding answers. Someone posted photos of the county records I'd shown. Another tagged Patricia directly, asking for the official vote minutes. She sidestepped, as always, but the sidestep only deepened suspicion. Meanwhile, Evan sat on the porch, basketball in hand, watching the sunset slip over the lake. "They won't stop, will they?" he asked. "They will," I said, "but not because they want to, because they'll have no choice." Inside, I spread the papers again, refining the counter plan. The binder wasn't just my shield anymore. It was the foundation of a case I could take. To the county, the media, or straight to the homeowners. Patricia thought authority was hers by default. My job was to prove the opposite, that her authority was void. From the moment she decided to write rules on a draft, she never had the power to pass. Where are you watching from? Because here in Lakewood Estates, the stage is shifting. The residents aren't whispering anymore. They're watching, questioning, and preparing to stand. And soon, Patricia won't be fighting me alone. She'll be fighting the truth in every hand that holds it. By the following week, Patricia's grip on Lakewood Estates was visibly slipping. The neighborhood chat had turned into a courtroom of its own, with residents demanding proof of board votes she could never provide. Every post she made was met with screenshots of county filings or questions she dodged with vague slogans. But vague wasn't enough anymore. It was time to prepare the battlefield for something bigger than back-and-forth online arguments. Evidence needed to be packaged, witnesses aligned, and the stage set where Patricia couldn't hide behind digital walls. That meant the community center, the very room where she had once controlled the narrative. This time, it would hold the opposite. I spent evenings in my office, binder pages spread across the long oak table, drafting what amounted to a prosecutor's case, certified filings in one stack, Patricia's flyers in another, the annotated draft Mark had given me locked in a plastic sleeve at the back. I wrote outlines, bullet points, timelines. Not for court yet, but for the homeowners themselves. The next step was outreach. I visited neighbors directly, binder in hand, moving from porch to porch like a quiet campaign. At each stop, I explained the pattern. No vote, no record, no authority. Some were skeptical at first, but when I laid the certified filings beside Patricia's threats, the doubt turned to anger. One older couple stared at the highlighted absence of amendments and shook their heads. "We trusted her," the husband muttered. "She said it was unanimous." "It wasn't," I said. "And soon, you'll see just how far the deception goes." By the end of 3 days, I had a dozen families ready to stand at the next open meeting. Not angry voices shouting in chaos, but prepared residents holding evidence. Patricia wanted obedience. What she was about to get was accountability. At home, Evan hovered by the porch swing, listening as I rehearsed points aloud. He didn't always understand the legal details, but he understood tone, the calm precision that came from knowing the truth was on our side. His quiet presence reminded me why this mattered. The pier, the plaque, the memory of his mother. It wasn't just about fighting rules. It was about defending a legacy from being twisted into a weapon. The night before the meeting, I met Mark again. This time, not in shadows, but on his front porch, the glow of a single bulb overhead. He looked tired, eyes ringed, but his posture was straighter than before. He handed me a slim folder, his voice low. "Board financials," he said. "Official, but incomplete. You'll see what I mean." Inside were expense sheets with glaring gaps, payments listed for lake maintenance, but with no invoices attached, sums that didn't balance. And in the margin of one sheet, a scrawled note, "Reclassify under general upkeep." It was fraud hiding in accounting, clear as day. Mark swallowed hard. "I can't say this in front of her. Not yet, but if you put it in front of the room, I'll confirm it." That was all I needed. His conflict had shifted into quiet alliance. Patricia's strongest wall had become a fault line, waiting to split. The following afternoon, I carried my binder and Mark's folder into the community center. The chairs were already filling with residents, murmurs rising like static. Patricia sat at the front table, papers stacked, smile tight. But this time, the balance was different. "Where are you watching from?" Because from this room, the moment is clear. The preparation is done, the alliances are made, and the strategy is ready. Patricia thinks she's walking into another routine meeting. What she doesn't know is that this one will be her last in control. The community center smelled faintly of floor polish and nervous anticipation. Folding chairs scraped against the tile as residents settled in, filling the rows faster than I'd ever seen. Patricia sat at the head table in her usual position, flanked by 2 board members who shuffled papers but avoided eye contact with the crowd. Her smile was wide, but brittle, the kind of grin meant to disguise cracks. I placed my binder and Mark's folder on the table nearest the front row, close enough for the audience to see, but not within Patricia's reach. Evan sat quietly in the back, his basketball under the chair, watching as though the room were a courtroom. In a way, it was. Patricia tapped the microphone. "This meeting is called to order. We will address delinquent accounts first." Her voice carried that clipped, superior tone she used when she believed authority alone was enough. A murmur ran through the room. Parents exchanged looks. One raised a hand, but Patricia ignored it. She launched straight into a monologue about protecting common resources and ensuring compliance. I stood. "Before you continue, I have a point of order." Her eyes narrowed. "This is not the time for interruptions." "It is when the board's authority is in question," I replied, my tone calm but carrying. I lifted the binder, opening to the certified county filings. There is no amendment authorizing a lake fee. None recorded, none voted, none passed. Which means every notice you've issued, every sign you've posted, is void. The room stirred louder now. Neighbors leaned forward, phones out, recording. Patricia's face tightened, but she waved a hand dismissively. Technicalities. The board has discretion. Discretion isn't authority, I said, sliding one document forward. These are the county's official records. If the amendment doesn't exist here, it doesn't exist anywhere. Mark shifted at the head table. His hands clutched the financial folder he'd given me, knuckles pale. He looked at Patricia, then at the crowd. For a long, tense moment, he said nothing. But his silence was heavy, filled with everything he hadn't yet confessed. I opened the folder for the room to see. And these are financials provided by the treasurer. Notice the line item. Lake maintenance. Thousands of dollars marked as paid, but no invoices attached, no receipts, just blank entries. Gasps rippled through the crowd. One resident stood. "Where did that money go?" Patricia snapped back. "Those are legitimate expenses." I tapped the margin note. Reclassify under general upkeep. Written in her own looping hand. Legitimate? Or reclassified to hide the truth? Mark exhaled, shoulders slumping. His voice broke the silence, quiet but steady. "He's right. There was never a vote. And those expenses? Patricia told me to file them without documentation." The room erupted. Voices shouted over one another, anger replacing doubt. Patricia slammed her hand on the table. "Out of order! Out of order!" But the words had lost their power. Neighbors recorded every second, some already streaming live. One older woman shouted from the back, "You lied to us, Patricia." Another father waved a copy of the playground sign. "My kids were locked out because of you." Patricia's face flushed red. She pointed at me. "This is harassment. He's twisting facts." But Mark interrupted, louder now. "No, he isn't. I should have spoken sooner, but everything he's shown is true. The fee doesn't exist in the records. The board never voted. And those numbers in the financials, they don't balance." The room fell into stunned silence for a heartbeat, then exploded again, this time with calls for Patricia to step down. Someone shouted about calling the county. Another demanded a special election. Patricia gathered her papers with trembling hands, her authority bleeding out of the room like air from a punctured tire. For the first time, she looked small behind the table she once commanded. "Where are you watching from?" Because from this chair, it's clear. The strategy is in motion, the evidence is on the table, and the community's patience has snapped. Patricia thinks she can still claw back control. She doesn't realize her foundation is already gone. The community center had become a courtroom without walls. Residents pressed forward in their seats, some standing along the back wall with phones held high, capturing every second. Patricia's stack of papers no longer looked like authority. It looked like debris, scattered on a sinking ship. I stood steady at the front, binder open on the table beside me. The weight of the records, the annotated draft, and the fraudulent financials felt like anchors holding me in place. Across the room, Patricia's hands trembled as she shuffled her notes, but no amount of paper could shield her from the storm she had unleashed. A man in the third row raised his voice first. "You told us every family approved this fee. I never signed anything. Did anyone hear?" Heads shook around him, voices overlapping with no. The murmur spread like fire. Another resident stood, holding up his phone. "My grandkids were locked out of the playground last week. You think I won't tell the news about this?" Applause followed, sharp and defiant. Patricia slammed the microphone. "Order! This is a board-sanctioned meeting, not a circus." Her words were drowned by the crowd. Parents shouted about unfair treatment, retirees about property values being threatened, younger homeowners about illegal liens. The room had become a chorus, no longer her audience, but her jury. I lifted the binder higher, turning toward the crowd. "Every notice you've received, every sign you've seen, it's backed by nothing. No amendment, no county filing, no legal authority. These are not rules. They are threats dressed as rules." The room roared in agreement. Neighbors who had once whispered now shouted. "We trusted you, Patricia. You lied to us all. Step down." Patricia's face flushed deep red. She pointed at me, voice shaking. "He's misleading you. He wants to destroy this community." But then Mark rose. His chair scraped loud against the tile, and the crowd quieted to hear him. His voice wavered at first, but grew firm. "I'm treasurer. I've seen the numbers. He's not misleading anyone. What you've been told doesn't match the records. It doesn't even match our own books." Gasps filled the room. One woman near the front covered her mouth, whispering, "So it's true." Mark pressed on, the weight finally off his shoulders. "I tried to raise concerns. I was shut down. I should have spoken sooner. But now you all deserve the truth. There was never a vote. There is no lake fee. And Patricia ordered me to file expenses without proof." The crowd erupted. Shouts overlapped, some calling for immediate resignation, others for legal action. A neighbor waved a phone, already on a call to the county office. Patricia banged the microphone again, but no one listened. Authority had shifted. Her words no longer carried weight. The collective voices of the community did. Evan, still in the back row, leaned forward, eyes wide. For him, this wasn't just a meeting, it was vindication. The threats nailed to our door, the humiliation of seeing his name dragged through notices. All of it was being burned away in the fire of collective outrage. I closed the binder slowly, letting the sound punctuate the room. This isn't about one family anymore. It's about all of us. You've been misled, intimidated, and exploited. But the law is clear. If it isn't filed, it isn't enforceable. And if money is missing, it demands accountability. The room answered with a chant, "Step down! Step down! Step down!" The rhythm grew louder, shaking the air, bouncing off the walls. Patricia looked around, her allies silent, her confidence gone. For the first time, she seemed small in the chair she once commanded like a throne. Where are you watching from? Because here in Lakewood Estates, the gavel has already fallen, not in a courtroom, but in the voices of neighbors who finally saw the truth. Patricia may still be sitting at the front, but the board is no longer hers. The chant still echoed in the walls of the community center long after Patricia stormed out, her papers spilling like feathers in her wake. She hadn't resigned formally, but the crowd had already decided her authority was finished. I stayed behind, binder closed at my side, watching as neighbors gathered in small clusters, talking not about fear anymore, but about what came next. 2 days later, the county clerk's office confirmed what we already knew. No amendments authorizing the lake fee, no filings, no authority. Alongside that, the treasurer's testimony and the financial gaps I submitted triggered a review by the county's compliance department. Patricia's name was now attached to an official inquiry. Lakewood Estates looked different after that week. The orange flyers came down, one by one, peeled off doors by residents with a mixture of relief and anger. The playground reopened, the restricted sign shoved into a trash bin where it belonged. Children's voices filled the basketball court again, the sound carrying across the cul-de-sac, like proof that the neighborhood was ours again, not hers. Mark walked with me to the pier that weekend. The cedar slats creaked softly under our weight, the brass plaque glinting in the late afternoon light. He stood silently for a while, staring at the water. "I should have spoken up sooner," he admitted finally, voice low. "You spoke when it mattered," I said. "The rest, we'll fix together." He nodded, the heaviness in his posture lighter than before. In that moment, I saw not a conflicted witness, but a neighbor who had chosen the right side. Evan cast his line from the end of the pier. For the first time in months, he didn't look over his shoulder, waiting for someone to call him a trespasser. The lake was his again, ours again. And the memory tied to that pier was safe. The broader impact was already unfolding. A petition circulated through the neighborhood, demanding a special election to replace Patricia formally. Nearly every homeowner signed. Conversations that used to be hushed now took place openly on sidewalks, front porches, and in the cafe downtown. For once, the board wasn't a looming threat, but a project to rebuild. At home, the binder sat on the dining table, its pages no longer a shield against attack, but a record of a fight won. Every flyer, every notice, every forged attempt at authority lay preserved inside, a reminder of how close we came to letting silence rule. As the sun dipped low, the lake shimmered with gold. Evan reeled in his line, smiling when the hook came back empty. "It doesn't matter," he said. "It's just good to be out here." His words carried the simple truth of why this battle had mattered. Not money, not technicalities, but the right for a child to stand on a pier built from love without being branded a criminal. The community center would host another meeting soon, this time without Patricia's shadow at the front. Neighbors planned to fill the seats again, not to shout but to rebuild. The lake would stay open, the playground free, the basketball court alive. The board would answer to the people it served, not the other way around. Where are you watching from? Because here in Lakewood Estates, one father with a binder proved that no board, no fee, no manufactured rule is stronger than a community armed with truth. And if you want more stories of homeowners standing up to HOA tyranny, hit subscribe right now, share your story in the comments, and let me know where you're watching from.